Right, good afternoon. Right, today I'm just going to do a short video on it's stretching paper. You'll have heard people do this, but not everybody does it, and as often as it used to be done, because you can buy thicker papers now. So if you buy papers that are heavier weight, then there's no need to do it. But if you're going to be doing a piece where you're going to be using a lot of water, and you're using 300 GSM or under that, then I would highly recommend that you do stretcher paper. Now, I'm only going to be doing a small piece today just to show you on how to do it. It's quite a simple process. It doesn't take long. But obviously, if you're going to be doing a few paintings, then I would advise that you get a few prepared beforehand. Now, the paper I'm actually going to stretch today is a good quality paper. It's Fabriano. It is a 300 GSM, and it is not. So when you look at it, it has got a slight texture on there. But it's 300 GSM. So if I wanted to throw a lot of water at that, it would still cockle and buckle. And then you'll find it rather hard to either mount or frame afterwards, and it doesn't look quite so good. So if you want, a really, if it's a piece of work that you want to spend some time doing and really, putting a lot of effort into it, you want it to look nice on the finished process. So anything above 300 GSM or £140, I wouldn't necessarily stretch. Or even if you've got it in a block where all the four sides are glued, that's another good way of not having to stretch your paper, because it's already glued on all sides, so cockling isn't really an issue as that. But I'm just going to show you this. So I've got the paper. This is only a small piece. It's a 10 by 8 roughly. It's a piece of paper that I had spare. Side of me here, I'll just move this board out of the way. That's going to be my board. The other thing I'm going to need here is I've got a bowl of water. And then I'm going to need some kitchen roll, which I've got here. And then the other thing you're going to need, which is important, is gum tape. That's this here. Now, this is not like any other tape. It isn't sticky. If you look, it's shiny on one side, it's still on the other side. Now, to activate this tape, you need to wet it. So you'll need a sponge of some sort or a piece of cloth that's wet. To wet the tape, to activate it, to fasten the paper down onto the board. Okay, so I'm just going to wet a bit of a cloth here just so that I can got that so ready so I can do my my sides. Now, the first thing I'm going to do before I actually put the paper in to soak is I'm going to roughly cut 4 pieces of tape that's just 2 slightly wider than the narrow side of the paper, so 2 about that size, and then I'm going to do 2 longer pieces to make sure they cover the length of the paper. Okay, so that's 2 of those. So we've got those ready to one side, ready for when we've wet the paper. So now what we need to do is we need to immerse this paper into some water, and I can use a bowl or but as long as it's clean and it hasn't got anything in it. So it's advisable. I have a big plastic tub that was bought specially for stretching paper, so that is what I usually use. I haven't got it on me at the moment, so I'm just using this bowl, but it's had a good clean out, so it's fine. But all you need to do is you need to immerse your paper. So ideally, the bowl or the container where you put in the water needs to be big enough to hold the paper. Okay, so I'm just going to put it in there. I'm just going to let it so it's sinking and it's soaking. So I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to move back to one side for a moment. So that's soaking. Now, I don't want it to be immersed for much more than a minute and a half. It doesn't need to be soaked for a long time. Now, if you do that, you may have problems. It may pull away from the board. When it's dried, you may have it where it tears near the paper. So, it can cause problems. So, getting my board ready. So this is my board, what I'm going to fasten the paper to. So what I'm doing at the moment, the water there is getting into there, And then I'm just going to lift it and I'm just going to dangle it for a minute over the bowl just to get any excess water off it. Okay, so it's been in there for about a minute. Okay, so I'm just shaking the excess water off. And then what I'm going to do, that's the paper. So then I'm going to put it onto this board. Okay, now I'm not going to stick the tape on straight away. I'm going to give it a minute or a couple of seconds or so for the water to soak. Because what's happening is the paper, when watercolour paper's made, it's got sizing on it, which helps with the water. So it helps, so it doesn't disintegrate when you start watercolour painting and putting lots of water on there. So obviously we don't want to destroy that sizing, so that's why we don't soak it for too long. But also what we need is, now it's wet, what happens is the paper will expand slightly. So that's the whole idea. We want it to expand. Okay, so it's on there. So now I'm just going to get a little piece of kitchen towel, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to roughly, just round the edges here, I'm just going to give it a quick wipe, because obviously if they're wet and I'm putting the wet tape on as well, it's not all going to dry at the same time. So that's just something that I prefer to do. So I'm going to get my first piece of tape, which is here, and then what you're going to do is you're going to really wet it and activate it. So don't be worried about how much water you're putting on that tape. You want quite a bit on there. Okay, so that's then going to go there. Now I'm going to put it, or try and put it half and half. So and press it right down like that. Okay, so give it a good press down. So it's half on the paper and half on the board. Okay, and it has been covered totally with water, so it's stuck. So then I'm going to do another piece. So I'm going to get a longer piece, put water on it. There we go. So that's now activated. Turn it over. Again, half and half. Put that along that way. Push that down. Press down. Make sure it's really stuck. Then come to another piece. Oops, wrong way around. Make sure it's wet. Whoops. There we go. Totally wet. Okay, and again, about half and half. Okay, put that on. Really press it down. It sticks to that board. Last piece. My cloth, nice and wet. There we go. Plenty of water on that tape there. Okay, and again, half and half. Again, push down. Now then, what I want to do now is I'm just going to get my kitchen roll. It's dry, and I'm just really going to press all, oops, oh dear, caught that one. That one hadn't been pressed down. There we go. There, press down, press down, press down, down all those edges. I sort of rub it right up to the side of the, you can see where the watercolour paper is there. So push that right into there and there. And then all we need to do now is we need to just leave this paper to dry, but you need to leave it flat. Don't tip it up or dry at an angle like that, because the water will run from the paper obviously down to there, and again it can cause you major problems. Okay, so once you're happy that all of that is stuck down, right, on all of the edges, just go around with your fingers again if you're not sure. Okay, and then what we do is we just leave that, got a little bit of something there on the paper, that's it, right, so just leave that flat. Now you can see the shine on it because it's wet, and what will happen is it may cockle a little bit to start with, but as it dries, what happens is, as it dries, it pulls against this tape. So it's then contracting. So when we've wet it and it's expanded, when it dries, it contracts and it pulls against this tape. Now, it should, as long as that's been done perfectly okay. When it's done, it will be one perfectly dry, flat piece of paper. And then what all you need to do is do your painting. Now, you're painting on the piece as it is there. You do not take this tape off. you do your painting, and then after that you do take your tape off. And what will happen is you will have to cut your tape off, preferably on the inside there. So you'll have to use a scalpel blade. It doesn't come off. It's not, you can't use masking tape or anything like that to do this. You have to use what we call gum tape. And it's tape that you have to wet to activate. So but it's known as gum tape. Now I have a big roll, but you can buy smaller rolls than this. This is quite a big roll. So let that dry, do a painting on it, and it won't cockle. And then we cut it on just on the inside there. So bearing that in mind, when you're doing a painting and you want to do it a certain size, take into consideration the width of this tape. And if you're going to stretch it like this, you're obviously going to have a width of the tape on that side and on that side to take into consideration. So make your paper that much bigger, because you're going to be cutting the picture out once it's painted. And once you've done that and you've taken it off the board, you will find that it is flat, totally flat. You won't have any cockles in it or anything. So when it comes to mounting and framing, you shouldn't have any problems whatsoever. Now, once you've cut it off the board, you can get with a scraper. You can scrape the tape off the board and reuse your board again. This is one that I used the other day, so it's still got some tape on. But what I will do is, when this is dried and I've used it and taken it off, then what I'm going to do is I will scrape it off the rest of the board so that I can use it as a fresh board. But as I say, this is just a small piece of paper that I've had left, and I've soaked it. I can see it's still nice and wet. I put it on here, so that will be dry. It'll take, well, I'd say 2-3 hours. But if you can, preferably leave it overnight or whatever. But leave it flat. Whatever you do, just leave it flat. And don't put anything else on top of it. I mean, I had a group that decided, oh yes, we're going to stretch some paper, so they stretched it. And then I turned around and I come to collect them all, and they piled them all up on top of each other. And some of the board obviously got markings, like if you look on the back of this board, obviously it's been used before. And when they put it onto the wet paper, obviously that came through onto there. So whatever you do, do not put anything else on top of it. Just let it dry. Just let it dry flat like that. So just put it somewhere safe. If you want, you can do 2 or 3 together, and then you've got 2 or 3 pieces ready for you to paint. And you can carry on and then cut them off. So we'll let that dry, and then in another short video later down the line, when I'm going to discuss papers, I'm going to do one, and I'm going to go through all the different types of paper you can buy, the different weights, the textures of the paper, and how you can buy them, whether you can buy them in loose sheets, on pads, or on glued pads, or even on paper roll. And also I will give you a bit of information that I can do on, especially on the ones I've used personally, what the pros and cons are of each paper. And when we do that video, what I'll do is I'll fetch this back out and I'll show you how we cut it off the board. So we'll do a bit of a paper thing with it. We'll put some paint on, throw some water at it and a load of paint at it, and then we'll take it off, and you can see exactly what happens and how straight it is and flat. So that'll be on another video, which we'll probably do. I will probably do it tomorrow afternoon, something like that, and then that will get posted. And it'll be more information on paper, because to me, one of the important choices you're going to make when watercolour painting, as you improve, is going to be your paints and paper. They will make a massive difference to how you improve as you go along. Using a good quality paper is very, very important. And I make sure I've used several types, and you'll find which one's best for yourself. And it depends on how much water you're going to be using. And you don't always have to stretch it, but there's certain papers that have certain qualities. So yes, paper is very important. And then obviously the brand of paints that you pick. Now, artist quality paints are always going to be better than student quality paints, because they're going to have a lot more pigment in them. So They may be a little bit more expensive and the tubes are small, but because of the pigment that's in them, you don't use as much. So really, they are value for money. So even though you may pay that little bit more, they're value for money. And the pigment is good quality. So yes, the paints, for me, paints and the paper are two very important issues when I come to doing a painting. Okay. Brushes, well, some people still prefer the sable. I prefer synthetic, but I do use sable as well. So I have a varied amount of brushes. The main thing with brushes is that you look after them and you treat them properly, and the point will last so long. If you're doing a lot of fine detail work and using small brushes, you'll find they will not last as long as if you're doing bigger work with bigger brushes. They will last longer. Okay, so we'll go into them in a little bit more detail in another video. But for now, that was just a quick show of how to do the stretching of the paper. So I'm just now going to put that to one side, leave it to dry, and then I'll fetch it out again tomorrow. I'll go through some information on different types of paper for you, what the pros and cons are, and we'll do a little bit with this, so then we can cut it off and I'll show you how flat it is. Okay, so thank you for listening now, and I'll catch up with you on another video tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.